Good afternoon, I'm Adventure Argonaut. This is TV Argospective on the Star Trek Next Generation Season 2. I did the review on Season 1 a couple of weeks ago, but stuff came up and I couldn't get around to it. And also it's a good chance because I decided to give up on the game Jeanne d'Arc. I don't want to be streaming that anymore since I just the game just pisses me off. Like I don't want to play it unless I get paid a hefty sum of money for it. But speaking of Star Trek: The Next Generation, a couple of days ago I uploaded the Argospective, the review of finally Unity Star Trek Next Generation point and click game on my YouTube and Rumble channels. But anyway, now I've been checking that my streams are working, so let's start. So this is review of Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2. I rewatched it recently. Well, it's probably a couple of months since I watched this particular season already. But I think my memories should still be fairly fresh and I should re- be able to recall the relevant details of the episodes. But let's start with the child. So yeah, this is the first, obviously the first episode of the season, and it made me feel a bit apprehensive about watching, like starting to watch the second season. Is because it's not the most exciting episode starter because I think all the other seasons start with a double, like a two-part episode. Because like Encounter at Farpoint, which starts the first season, it's two-parter, and then like yeah, Best of Both Worlds. Well, no, then it's also season three also starts with a single episode. But yeah, then it's like end of season three and start of season four is best of both worlds, and end of season four is some double episode. I don't remember which one right now, but yeah, I think it's all. So, anyways, that doesn't matter so much. So the child is that weird, some non-corporeal alien enters the body of Diana Troy and impregnates her, and then she gets pregnant and has a child and it takes only like few days, I think, for the child to be born, and then the child is born, and the child lasts only a few days until he dies and stuff. Very sad and stuff, but I think it's a very disturbing episode in one way, because she basically gets violated by this alien, but it's not made like the episode does its best to make you like not think about that, because they always say like, oh, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with you physically, or like after the pregnancies, after she's given birth. The doctor, who is Catherine Pulaski, says that there's no evidence that she's ever given birth and stuff. So, and there's no pain when she's giving birth and stuff like that. So it's like it's very non-intrusive to her and stuff. But yeah, the other reason why I didn't want to really watch this episode, because season two doesn't have Doctor Crusher. It has Dr. Pulaski, and when I was a teenager, I really didn't like the character of Pulaski. I guess one reason is because Data used to be my favorite character in Star Trek, and she's sort of, let's say, bigoted towards Data, because it's a they sort of tried to recreate the dynamic between Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock in the original series with Data and Pulaski, and on occasion it sort of works, but it is still sort of lame that it's they try to recreate like even the the roles are the same, like the science officer and the doctor, and one is emotionless or calculating, and the other is more like old school, old fashioned kind of person, I guess. But to my surprise, I actually, watching the whole season, I sort of liked the character of Pulaski. Now that I'm older, even though like I don't think the show really shows much about her character itself, except her, old-fashioned way of doing things. Like she doesn't like to use transportation and like beaming and things like that. Of course, he's very skeptical of data being an actual person instead of just a machine and things like that. But I'm not sure she has feelings for Riker's dad, but that, well, we can get to that episode later. But yeah, like at least the like because my recollections about this episode, the chart was that it's gonna be a bit dull episode because not much happens. She basically just has the kid, and then there's some other thing that they're transporting some dangerous viruses or something. But then the containment field from one of the containers is, breaks down, and the Enterprise is in danger, and then they find out it's actually the alien baby is somehow causing some radiation that causes it. So then the baby basically has to um, kill itself and to save the Enterprise. But yeah, so it's basically just some alien who wanted to experience human life for a while, and that's why it impregnated Deanna Troy. So it's like this, very touchy feeling, positive kind of episode. And it's like it's okay, but it's just not that exciting. All right, let's go to the second episode where silence has lease. So there's Nagilum, this weird thingy that, well, first of all, they find a hole in space, and there's some old Klingon legend about a hole in space, or that, eats ships by the whole by by in its entirely. Like Worf, of course, is apprehensive about the thing, and then yeah, there's Nagilum, is just some um, entity that is much more powerful than humans, and sort of wants to learn about humanity. But unlike in the child, who is very nice kind of alien, this one just doesn't understand. He doesn't understand mortality, so he kills a couple of people, and then he intends to start killing more people to learn more about death. But oh yeah, and there's some illusions it creates as well. But anyways, but it only should take like one third of the crew to kill them. So not even everybody is very considerate. But of course, Picard will have none of it. So then I think he triggers the auto destruct sequence that kill everybody to deny Nagilum of its fun, and then he sort of lets them go. So I think this is very classic kind of Star Trek episode. Like there's weird space phenomena, a weird alien that has very powerful powers, and it's not about blasting the enemies from the sky and stuff like that. So it's decent episode, like pretty enjoyable, but I don't have much to say beyond that about it actually. But yeah, decent episode. Then there's Elementary Dear Data, which is of course nice to see. I like to see Data as dressed as Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, and then there's Jordy pretending to be Dr. Watson, and then of course Catherine Pulaski joins them on the holodeck, and then she's because Data knows. Well, no, actually, no, it's I think Jordy gets annoyed by it because Data manages to solve every mystery he comes across immediately without even trying, since he's read all of the Sherlock Holmes stories. So if he knows I don't know, a character by name, he knows like, oh, this is what happens. This character in that story is the bad guy. So Jordy doesn't appreciate it, and then he tells the computer to create an adversary capable of defeating Data. So he phrases it capable of defeating Data and not and instead of Sherlock Holmes, and then it generates Dr. Moriarty, which was Sherlock Holmes's nemesis. And but of course, there's a glitch because it's a holodeck episode. So actually, Moriarty becomes like a sentient being who understands, that he is a holographic creation and he's not in Victorian England. He's actually on the Enterprise holodeck and all that stuff. And he abducts Dr. Pulaski, but in the end, they sort of manage to convince him that, yeah, we'll do something about it, we'll try to get you out of the holodeck and stuff like that. And it's sort of interesting episode, but it's also stupid in the sense that, if you phrase it, um, your question or like your command to the computer incorrectly, that the computer can just basically disable all the holodeck safeties, because usually the holodeck has safety protocols and procedures that they it cannot create something that would be really harmful to people, but it's um, those things are disabled simply because Jordy said that you should generate an opponent for Data. So then it's sort of it's a bit silly in that sense, and like small details like that, maybe you should be able to um, ignore them, but it's difficult for me because it sort of jeopardizes the whole premise of the episode in that sense. But it's still, sort of atmospheric episode, nice in that sense. And there's the outrageous Okona. So there's this guy. I think he was in the 90s. Maybe I'm confusing him with somebody else, but some lame ass TV drama about like two families. Like the dad had a kid, and then the guy, this guy had a kid, and then there was a he fell in love with some woman who also has kids, and they're both divorcees or something, and then they get together. Whatever, doesn't matter. I'm not even sure if it was really this guy. It's been so long. But yeah, he Okona is some roguish playboy kind of character, and he comes to the Enterprise because his ship is malfunctioning, and then there's a feud between two planets, like uh, the daughter of the ruler of one planet is pregnant, and he's accusing Okona, and then the other planet, the ruler is accusing Okona of having stolen their some sacred ring or whatever, chalice of rigs, whatever it is. And of course, I guess the um, I don't know how to describe, but like, anyways, Okona gets to screw Terry Hatcher, who is very like young and in her prime in the episode. So that's of course makes you envious. Um, but like in the end, it turns out that it's actually the guy of like here, yeah, the guy from the planet. This guy was actually is the father of the child. So actually, and now they have to get married, or they want to get married, but they didn't want to announce their sort of Romeo and Juliet in space. But Okona was accused, and also like the ring that was stolen, he actually gave it to her and stuff. So everything is solved in the end, and they get married, and then the feud ends. And it's like not terribly exciting episode, but uh, decent episode. Like, I guess so far, like, I of these four episodes, I think Where Silence Has Lease is the best one. But like they're fairly solid episodes. and loud as a whisper. This is okay. So there's some dispute on a planet between two factions of monkey men. Do we have a picture of the monkey men here somewhere? Alas, we don't. Well, whatever. They're ugly monkey men. But they have peace talks, and then this negotiator Riva is brought to, mediate the dispute. So this guy in the back, but he's deaf, and like that's normal on his planet that the nobility on his planet they're deaf, but he has a chorus of three telepaths who speak to him, and they represent different aspects of his personality. Like one of them is the rational guy, and then one of them is the emotional, and one is in the middle or something. And but of course, when they actually arrive on the planet, and Diana has sort of a romance with him as well. But when they arrive on the planet, then there's one guy who opposes the peace treaty and then kills his telepaths, and then he's alone and he doesn't really know how to communicate and he wants to give up. But then Data learns sign language to talk with him, and so he's gonna help out and stuff. And then he, in the end, beams back to the planet to force the representatives of the two monkey factions to learn sign language to communicate. And so it's a sort of nice episode, but it does make me feel like how extravagant, like the nobility on this planet, how waste of resources, like how can they it, like you need three guys to attend to his needs most of the time. Like, okay, he can go to the toilet without assistance, and yeah, there are times when only one of the telepaths is with him, like when he's having intimate conversations with Diana Troy's the passion guy who is with them and stuff. But it's if I was a citizen of that planet, I would probably advocate for revolution. Like, or maybe they have this Star Trek, and many cultures have solved the problem of scarcity. So maybe these guys are actually happy to oblige and help with. Uh, they don't have better stuff to do than to speak for this guy. But yeah, like I think the same trend continues. This pretty solid episode, but there's some details that sort of feel off to me. Maybe that's the the essence of the second season. And then there's the schizoid man. So there's Ira Graves, who is sort of like the grandfather of Data because he was sort of the mentor of Noonien and Soong, who created Data. So he's alone on his own planet, Graves world, with only this young woman. And of course, he has the hots for her, but she doesn't care, of course. And but anyway, and Ira Graves, he is dying, but then he uploads his consciousness into Data, sort of possessing him, and and then Data gets jealous over her and stuff like that. But like, okay, I have to comment that was like, yeah, here's Ira Graves. Like this guy, he was the bad guy in some Elvira movie back. I guess it was from the 80s and stuff. So that's when I see this guy. That's what it reminds me of. Even though like I've seen the movie once, like sometime in the 90s, or like over 30 years ago probably. But it still makes me think of that Elvira movie, like the Mistress of Darkness or whatever her title was. But yeah, it's a episode about Data, so not bad. I don't know. I don't have much to say about that beyond that. Actually, it's a okay episode as well. And okay, I guess that's the interesting part, that it has Doctor Selar, her this Vulcan doctor, and I, that might be the only time she's actually shown in the show. But like in later seasons, she's referred to as a few times. Like let it's Susie Plaxon. Okay, that's why she looks so familiar. Okay, okay, because Susie Plaxon is Kaylar, the Worf's lover and the mom of Alexander Rosenko. Yeah, because I thought she looked familiar. Suspicions. So is she actually showed in this episode of or not? But I don't think they show her in any other episode. Whatever. But yeah, that's the Schizoid Man. It's it's another fairly solid episode, but I don't know. Unnatural selection. Okay, this is an episode with a boring premise, but it's done in a pretty good way. So I sort of liked it, because that was another episode like, oh, it's just like, I think this episode encapsulates it. There's Catherine Pulaski, who I used to call, when I was a teenager, I used to call her the grandma, and she becomes even more of a grandma. So it's like, it's gonna be a dull episode, because it's just there's the ship USS Langtree, and they died of an old age, and then there's some colony, and then they have a similar problem, and then Pulaski also gets the illness, and she starts to suffer from it. But like, what makes it good is that I think the way they actually handle the isolation and all that stuff, like trying to investigate the disease without infecting everybody else, it is done pretty well. But despite their best efforts, it sort of fails, because like, compared to the episode A Naked Now, like, there's a disease and they don't really do any quarantine measures or stuff like that. So it's done much better in this episode, because there's some planet where they're doing genetic research, or it's a research station, whatever it is. And there's like some genetically enhanced children, some super kids, and like all the adults are suffering from the aging, but not the kids. But so they assume the kids are immune to the disease, and so like that they could be able to study them without any problems. But then they like beam the kid to a shuttlecraft with both just data, because he's of course immune to the disease, and Pulaski, and then she takes off the force field or whatever protective layer. But then Pulaski gets infected anyways, because apparently, like, the kids are not only carriers, but they are the reason why the disease is, because it's like their immune system is so advanced that it somehow like attacks like make attack some disease that already exists, and turns it against the people to make them grow older, whatever. I don't remember the technicalities how it's supposed to work, but I just I like the way how they handle it. And also, like, it's sort of for one of the first episodes where Data and Pulaski sort of interact, and like, she gains some respect for Data, and I guess stuff like that. So yeah, I think that the medical procedure stuff is handled pretty well in that episode. It's surprisingly much better episode than I remembered. And this is one of the first like proper Klingon episodes in Next Generation, because this is where Riker serves as an exchange officer on a Klingon warship. It's just that the Klingon captain is a reach. So actually, this is very, let's say, human centric. Like, makes non-human aliens seem retarded, because there's like a like when Worf, I mean Riker, beams to the Klingon ship, or like when the Klingon ship arrives, there's a Benzite, this sort of guy, who also like a new ensign or something, new officer on the Enterprise, and then he notices some weird infection on the hull of the Klingon ship. But instead of doing what you're supposed to do on a Federation ship, is tell the captain immediately when you see something suspicious. But he just notices the suspicious infection thingy and starts studying it, and because he doesn't want to report it before he actually knows what he's looking at. So anyways, then um, the Klingon ship, the Pach, I think is the name, with Riker, they go away, and then they discover there's some, whatever metal disease on the ship, and then when the Klingon ship is away, they start having technical difficulties, and then they realize that the Enterprise has scanned the exact spot where the thing started. Uh, so then the captain, the Klingon captain, assumes that the Enterprise caused this, and of course Riker says it's ridiculous, and then he has to um, assume command, and sort of, because the captain is incompetent. Although in the end he sort of, I think, gives back the captain, his command. But yeah, maybe he should have been assassinated in Klingon manner. But yeah, there's these scenes where Riker has to earn the respect of the Klingons, and shows that Klingons are people too, and they also have a sense of humor, unlike Worf. So it's a fun episode. I guess it's a bit too um like it all happens so fast. Like, I think Riker is only a few hours on the ship, but all these things happen that he already assumes command of the ship. So it would make logically more sense if he actually stayed on the vessel much longer, like 2 weeks or something. But it's a single episode, so of course they cannot stretch it too much. But yeah, it's a pretty fine episode as well. It's like, yeah, every episode has been um, fine so far, but no masterful episodes, and we're gonna continue with that. Like, this is one of the, I guess, most famous episodes in Next Generation, The Measure of a Man. But it's another episode that is quite enjoyable, but it's sort of ridiculous. Like, the base premise doesn't make sense to me. So it's, of course, that there's the what's his name, Maddox. Is it Maddox? Yeah, Bruce Maddox comes to the Enterprise, and he wants to disassemble Data to learn more about how he's made and how he works and what makes him tick. But then Data realizes that he doesn't really know what he's doing, so he might actually destroy or injure Data in the process. So he refuses, and then he tries to form Data into this procedure to make him Data into his guinea pig. And so they have a trial where they have to determine whether Data is actually a sentient being, or just property of Starfleet. And it just doesn't make sense, because Data has been a Starfleet fleet officer for like 25 years at this point. Don't recall the exact number, but something like that. And he's the second officer on the Federation flagship. So you assume that they already determined that he's a sentient being. Like, surely they did something like this when he first joined Starfleet. Like, they have had this discussion then and not right now? So in that sense, it makes zero sense. But the trial itself, Picard acts as his defense lawyer and Riker as the offense lawyer, prosecutor, or whatever. So that stuff is fun and exciting, but it just doesn't make sense that they like it, despite Gene Roddenberry's claims that humanity has advanced and gotten better, but like uh, humanity has got to past its many of its biases. But I think especially in the first couple of seasons, whenever they have some other Starfleet officer who's not a member of the crew, they turn out to be assholes like Maddox here. So yeah, Starfleet seems to be full of short-sighted, self-centric assholes. But yeah, it's a fun episode, but the premise just doesn't make sense. There's the Dauphin, not Jean d'Arc. So yeah, this is like Wesley's first love, and despite that, it's a decent story. There's this young woman, Sully, and she's supposed to go to some other, like she's just being transported from one planet to another to become their ruler, and she's a teenager, and she has him old crone as her um, Anya. Yeah, Salia is the young girl and Anya is the old crone attendant. But then actually both of them are shapeshifters, and the old crone turns into this weird monster that Worf fights for a while and stuff, gets his ass kicked. And so yeah, and I guess that's their real form, some weird light being. So anyways, when Wesley finds out that she's shapeshifter, he gets weirded out and stuff. But in the end, he comes to say goodbye and stuff. So it's an also a fairly solid episode. Like that's the essence of season two. Like no episode. Like, well, I don't know if there's anything particularly wrong with the Dauphin except Wesley Crusher being the main character. Maybe that's the biggest mistake, but nothing too great. But okay, let this one. The Contagion. This is one of the best episodes of the season because this is well, yeah, it has many of my favorite elements. I do think also the people who made a final unit in the game also have, because it has similar themes. It has Romulans and it has an ancient advanced civilization. I like both. So yeah, they come across the USS Yamato and Donald Worley, and it's also in the neutral zone. So the Yamato is destroyed because it has some computer virus, and it also infects the Enterprise. So then they find out there used to be Iconians, some ancient civilization, and then they discover they actually had some sort of uh, like doorway, the Iconian gateway, which is basically you could teleport wherever with it, or at least to many, very distant locations. And there's even a Deep Space Nine episode with an Iconian gateway. I think it was like it's before the war started, so the Dominion, like the Jem'Hadar and Federation, have to cooperate to kill some rogue Jem'Hadar to ensure that they don't abuse the Iconian gateway. But yeah, this is just also very like at the essence of another kind of like essence of what Star Trek is about. Compared to where Silence has least like Nagilum stuff, space entity, and powerful being doing experiments on lesser people, like less powerful entities. Um, but yeah, this is about ancient advanced technology and like conflict with Romulans. So it's a great episode, and but it's not exciting to talk about except to gush over it. I like the episode. The Royale. Okay, this is probably the maybe the weakest episode so far. It's still not bad, but it's just like some distant planet. So is it Riker, Data, and was it Worf? It's Worf with them. But anyway, the away team goes to this planet, and then they find a casino there, like from 20th century casino, and then they find that a hotel room is like the remains of some American astronaut who had died there, and a novel called Casino Royale. So basically, there's some alien race that have had found the crashed shuttle of the human astronaut, and he had sort of, and they had recreated this casino for him and all these people, sort of as his own personal home, like and he of course hated it to having to be stuck in this casino for the rest of their life of his life because he's dead, of course. But the aliens probably didn't mean to, torture him. They thought they were being nice, presumably, but we never find out who the aliens are. And it's sort of like too on the nose, like in the beginning, Picard and Striker or whoever, they talk about some ancient mystery, some scientific dilemma or something that nobody has been able to solve, and then it wraps up with, well, this is a mystery we cannot solve. It's I don't know, could have been a bit more subtle, and it's yeah, they have to basically buy out the casino because the book that the Casino Royale is, or the Royale is, based upon it ends with three foreign investors buying out the casino. So yeah, then they have to play the role to end the simulation, as it were, and they can leave because they were stuck there. So it's not a bad episode either, but it's a bit like I guess it's sort of exciting to see um, the in Star Trek when they sort of go back to old Earth and stuff. But even though this is not time travel, but this one is, you know, uninspired. I guess that's the word. It's still fairly solid. Like not terrible, but uninspired. And time squared. So this is the episode with. So yeah, they find a duplicate of Picard, who is just 6 hours from the future, but he's sort of not all there. Like he's unconscious at first, but then when they bring him to consciousness, he's sort of delirious and just obsessed to getting to a shuttlecraft and escaping. And so there's some sort of loop, and how do they get from away, free themselves from the loop? And I was a bit like I had the impression watching this episode that, like before rewatching this episode, that it's gonna be a very good episode, but it's a bit mediocre, I guess. Um, just and it's all about the indecisiveness, how Picard doesn't like seeing himself being so indecisive, and it's making him indecisive, and some of them question his judgment and stuff. But like this sort of time mysteries is also very solid Star Trek. But somehow this was a bit of a letdown. Once again, it's not a bad episode certainly, but a bit mediocre. It's like I feel like they had ambition for it to be something more, but it sort of failed to live up to the ambitions. And the Icarus factor. This is one that I remember to be a bit of a dull episode, but maybe I enjoyed it more now that I'm older or something. Well, for one, it's so I guess the main plot is that Riker is offered his own command, the Ares, and he's considering whether to do it. And of course, his dad comes on board the Enterprise to announce it, and Riker is estranged from his father, Kyle Riker, and then they of course sort of patch up in the end. And but there's one thing I've noticed about Star Trek, especially Next Generation, like pretty much all of the main characters, like none of them have their all of their parents alive. Like, let's just think about it. Picard, well, I think his parents are dead already. Then Riker, well, yeah, his mom is dead and he's estranged from his dad. Well, actually, at this point, Data, although we don't know it, but Data's dad, quote unquote, not Dr. Noonien Soon, he is alive, but he's missing and presumed dead. And also, well, he also has a mom, sort of, but they didn't even know it. I think it's season 7 when we find about that. And then who else? Worf. Well, his actual parents are dead. He's an orphan. Tasha Yar, yeah, she grew up on this colony, with rape gangs and stuff, and I think her parents are dead, and of course she's dead already at this point. Jordy, his both parents are alive until when we actually sort of get to meet them. Then his mom also is missing and presumed dead. Who am I missing? Crusher. Well, Crusher, at least her husband is dead. I don't know if I don't recall much actually about her parents. They're probably mentioned in some episode. Am I missing somebody? Oh, Troy. Yeah, Troy. He's her mom is alive and annoying, but her dad is dead. So yeah, it's none of the characters really just have two parents who are alive. Is this like was it actually made by Disney? Anyways, so yeah, Riker meets his dad, and also there's Worf is very grumpy the whole episode until his friends discover that it's the anniversary of his rite of ascension, so he has to do this ritual of getting um, stuck by pain sticks on the holodeck. Uh, so when his friends may do the ritual thingy for him, and also one of the holographic Klingons, I think it's John Tesh, some new age musician. I just remember it because there's Star Trek Next Generation collectible card game has a card on him, the Katesh. Don't know anything about his music or anything, but just like he's a cameo in the episode, so that's why it's interesting. But yeah, okay, they have this. The Rikers have this fight of some martial art where they're blind and beating with these sticks and they look silly. And I guess the reason why I don't like this is because it's never referenced after this, like this sport, whatever it was called, Anbot Jutsu. Yeah, and boy stick. I'm not sure what it's an. Um, yeah, I wish we'd see, later episode where Riker actually uses it. Like he probably does some martial arts later on in some episode, but but there's one thing I do like about this episode because there's no danger at all. Like there's no, somebody's gonna die unless we prevent it, or the Enterprise is gonna blow up. It's nice to have, every now and then. Like not every episode, like even though I guess the most exciting episodes do have a sense of danger and urgency, but this episode doesn't, and it's a nice change of pace, I guess I would say. But yeah, it's another, like, still perhaps a little bit dull episode because not that much happens, but it's nice to have this, and also I guess nice to see the weird Klingon ritual stuff with the paint sticks. Okay, pen pals. Okay, well, this is an episode where some uh, young girl from some alien planet contacts Data via radio or something, and they become pen pals, as it were. And but then they find out that the planet is going to be destroyed by some natural disasters or something. And Data basically violates the Prime Directive to save her life and stuff. And it's moral dilemma, and sort of like, I guess it should raise some questions about the Prime Directive. Like, we shouldn't, they shouldn't interfere with the natural development of other species, but it sort of makes them into, like, into a god role. And especially, like, it's a bit sus because, like, okay, if it's because they have helped many planets in previous episodes, like, there's some, I don't know, asteroid or errant moon threatening to destroy a planet, and then they help it, but it's because they ask for help. And here, actually, Sarchenka, when their little girl, the alien girl, who looks a bit creepy though, she sort of asks for help, even though she doesn't know that she's asking to an android on another, or not another planet, but on a starship doing it. So, like, that's like, like, if they're Stone Age people, they are okay to be destroyed. You shouldn't help them, but if they are smart enough to have technology, then you can help them. It's a bit sus, and I'm not saying I have the solution to this, but like, the Prime Directive is a bit questionable, and I'm not the first or the last one to point it out. And of course, I'm not saying they should get rid of the Prime Directive altogether, but yeah, like, what's the harm in, like, oh, it's like, it sounds a bit religious because it's like the natural development, or however they phrase, like, how is it supposed, like, they believe in destiny basically, even though the Federation, especially humanity in Star Trek, is basically atheists who don't really believe in supernatural stuff, but clearly they believe in some sort of predetermination, preordination based on the Prime Directive, because easily they could just make the argument, well, it's the destiny of this planet or this race that they come across the Enterprise, and then we help them. Like, sure, like, it makes sense you don't give laser guns to cavemen, because that's obvious that that's probably not a good idea. But, like, okay, if they're in danger of facing extinction, I think that's a different story to help them. And of course, like, they can't help everybody in the whole universe who is in trouble. So. But anyway, so now we get to Q Who. So it's sort of interesting that, I guess, the two most famous antagonists of the Next Generation are both in this episode. There's Q, of course, who is the like, basically godlike entity who informs of um, you know Picard and the crew of the Enterprise of the existence of the Borg, who are, of course, these cybernetic life form drones who just want to assimilate everybody. Even though, like, the Borg here are a bit different, because they go to some, like, when they actually board the Borg ship and stuff, they go to the some sort of incubation room that they have babies with cybernetic parts in them, and they say, like, when the Borg uh, beam aboard the Enterprise, say that they only want to assimilate the ship. They don't care about the life forms. But later on, especially well in in First Contact, the movie, they are very much interested also in assimilating people. Well, in Best of Both Worlds, they wanna assimilate. Well, they assimilate Picard, but that's for specific reasons. But I guess like I'm what I'm trying to hint at is that you might say it's an inconsistency in the Borg, but of course you can say they have evolved because that's what they're supposed to be doing, like changing their modus operandi. But yeah, the Borg, like back in the day, they were certainly my favorite antagonist and really genuinely creepy. But I just think after the next generation, the Borg have been really watered down and they're not intimidating at all. But like yeah, it's and also this well the season has Guy and Whoopi Goldberg as this a bartender in 10 Forward. Also, yeah, they introduced 10 Forward, like basically the bar on the Enterprise. I guess the bar um, raises a few questions, like how do they, when they order drinks, like do they have to pay, like do they have some sort of like energy credits that they only can use a certain amount of energy credits per month, or is it all free? Like why can't, because they could easily just order the same stuff because it's mostly replicated anyways from their own replicators in their quarters. How does it work? And sometimes they say that I'll offer you a drink, I think, but it's just a figure of speech, or does it actually mean that they're using their own credits because they don't use money in Starfleet or in Federation? But anyway, Guinan, it's like I think Guinan the character is interesting, but I think it would have been better if somebody else acted as Guinan instead of Whoopi Goldberg. But she's not too bad at it. But somebody either other else would have been better, I guess. Um, but maybe I would have still preferred that they ran into the Borg in some other way instead of wasting Q. And of course, like it's sort of Q sort of makes causes the problem for them because the I guess the Borg weren't really aware of the Federation before this, but once they encounter, because Q takes the Enterprise far away, where along far away from known space and stuff to warn them, but that also sort of alerts the Borg of the presence of the Federation, and then they become more interested in it. Well, I don't know. Like, it's just of course, cool to see Q, but maybe. Well, I think most Q, like even though Q is a fascinating character, I think it's very rarely that they actually really use the character in a good way because it's literally the Q has limitless opportunities. Like he could pretty much do everything. So it's very difficult to write something like that when you have like unlimited resources to do something. You don't really know what you should be doing with it. So that's usually the thing with Q. But it's a decent episode, but maybe it sort of lacks direction or something. Like I'm trying to verbalize my feelings about the episode and it's difficult. Then there's Samaritan Snare. This was one of my favorite episodes growing up because there's the pack led. They're basically a race of space retards, and they just basically steal technology from other races, and they want to better their technology, but they can't really make anything of their own. And of course it's not too serious episode because the obvious criticism that everybody has pointed out is that if the Packlet are really that dumb, how could they even ever go to space? Like, why aren't they basically in, I don't know, Stone Age or something? But I just maybe you shouldn't think too much, and I guess they are still smarter than they seem, but not that smart. But I do think it's there's one brilliant scene there because they're having problems with their engines or something, and then they beam over Chordy there to fix it, and then Diana Troy comes to the bridge or something. She came from the shower or whatever. It's like, hey, no, don't beam anybody over. There, I sense deception, but it's too late. And then they, hold Jordy as hostage and force him to, do more repairs for them and to enhance their systems and stuff. So that's like a, I don't know, a good use of Diana Troy and her empathic powers. But yeah, I think the Packlet, it's ridiculous, but it's fun. And then they of course have to use the Crimson Force Field, yeah, to deceive the Packlet so they can, uh, you know, get Jordy back and all that stuff. But it is sort of like makes okay, yeah, yeah. It was also had this that Picard has to go. Yeah, so it's the artificial heart. It's this episode, right? I forgot. Yeah, so this also reveals that Picard has an artificial heart and he has to go to some outpost, yeah, Starbase 515 with Pulaski to do an operation. But I think there's some problems with it, and then Pulaski has to do it anyway. So because Picard doesn't want the crew to know that he has it, so because it would make him seem vulnerable or something. But I think they find out anyways. But yeah, it is stupid for from the Enterprise that they just beam their chief engineer to this alien vessel they know nothing about. Like that's genuinely dumb. Like at least they should beam him with a small team of defensive, security or something, or like just beam some random lieutenant engineer there. So yeah, that's dumb. So it's not the Packlets who are the only ones dumb, but I like the episode. Up the long ladder. Oh yeah, this is the like there's two different cultures that mix. So there's like there were some um, like colony ships 100 years ago or whenever, and one of them had this like Irish sort of Amish kind of folk, and then another one was more like scientific, and they had, is it the cloning stuff, right? Let's see, clone, yes, yes. So but then there's Mariposa, and their society is made of clones, so they only have like few people who they clone. They've been cloning them for many generations, but the clones, of course, they start to degrade over time, so they want to, then they actually abduct, was it Riker or somebody at some point, and few personnel from the Enterprise to clone them in secret, but then they found out and they actually just destroy the clones while they're being grown in vats. And of course the solution is to send these Irish, basically 19th century technology people to the colony to reinvigorate their gene pool and stuff. So it's sort of, and this woman is quite feisty, rare. But yeah, it's a very, I would say, average episode, but it's like, the next generation is a good show, so even an average episode in a good show is pretty good. So yeah, like, it's not the most exciting. That's very consistent. Like, I think season 2 is very consistent. Like, the best episode so far has been Contagion, like the one that I really like, and of course maybe like Where Silence Leaves, maybe that's number 2, and of course like Matter of Honor is pretty good too, but I don't like it that much. And of course the Measure of a Man, it has, it's very exciting, but it's still the premise is sort of ruins part of it for me. Okay, Manhunt, but this was a Loxana Troy episode, so she wants to find a husband. Uh, but was it the Ferengi? Right? There's the Ferengi. Am I this? No. Okay, this is like, I don't remember what exactly happens here. I guess that doesn't speak that well on the episode because there's many of these Laxana Troy episodes. So it's holodeck, Dixon Hill. All right, and there's holodeck and stuff. See, this isn't a very exciting episode. And they go to the holodeck. Oh yeah, there's this hologram, and she sort of likes and stuff. See, okay, I'm not even gonna go through the plot because it's not very. Yeah, there's some Dixon Hill holodeck stuff, and um, but I think the most exciting part of the episode, because like there's also these ambassadors, these fish people, Antidians, I believe. Yeah, and Antidians, and they're in. I think they're like in stasis because that's how they usually travel. But like, when they're about to beam down to some planet or something, then Laxana Troy just reads their minds, and oh, by the way, these aren't the actual ambassadors; they're assassins and stuff, and then they're arrested. I think that's the crowning moment of the episode. So otherwise, I don't remember it so well. Like, yeah, now I see this picture, I remember her them of talking, and she likes the guy and stuff. But yeah, this is a bit. It's still not a terrible episode, but if I can't remember much about it, it's not that great. Because, well, Laxana Troy isn't my favorite character, no, nor is she anyone's, but there's actually at least one Laxana Troy episode later on a later season that I like. The Emissary. And yeah, this is good, they point out. For the DS9 episode with a similar title, please see Emissary. This is annoying. Like, because Emissary is the first episode, the pilot of Deep Space Nine. But anyway, so there's this Kalar, Kehleur, as you would say as a Finn. I think this sounds more Klingon. Maybe her name should be Kehleur. So she comes to the Enterprise, and of course, like, her and Worf know each other already, and they have a romance, and they get together despite, like, of course, they have, much conflict because they're Klingons, of course. That's how Klingon romance is. Well, it's can't say that human romance is that different actually, but for Klingons, is, I don't know, more open like that. And well, yeah, there's like some Klingon ship that they're like, yeah, battle cruiser IKS Tong. So it was 75 years ago, like a sleeper ship, like all the crew were in cryogenic sleep, and they're about to wake up, and they think they're still at war with the Federation. So the crew of the Enterprise have to decide what to do with the ship, and like, Kalar here suggests that they just kill them all because you can convince them. But in the end, they manage to, Worf assumes command of the Enterprise and tells them to stand down and all that stuff. So there's a diplomatic solution to it. So it's I guess it's a decent episode. Like it's a personal drama episode. It almost like makes me feel like slight discomfort. But I guess it's a fairly decent episode. It's a season two episode. It's not the most exciting one, but pretty good. Okay, peak performance. This is one of the best episodes in season two. So there's a war game. They bring the 80-year-old starship, the Hathaway. So Riker is supposed to assume command of that, and then Picard has the Enterprise, and they're supposed to have a military exercise rehearsal. But then Ferengi suddenly come there to mess with them, and then they have to sort of fool the Ferengi, because I think like, all right, my son alarm has been launched. I'll be right back. I have returned. So yeah, I was about to say how the I think the ship to ship battles are like best in the first few seasons of Next Generation and the original series. Like maybe I'm wrong. This is my impression, but that the ship to ship battle stuff is more detailed and exciting in the first like earlier Star Trek. Later on, gets a bit too formulaic, not to be so exciting. Like the Wrath of Khan kind of battles. Do they really exist so much in the later seasons of like the Deep Space Nine wars with the Dominion? Those battles aren't that exciting either. But anyway, back to this episode peak performance. So then there's also the B plot is because this guy, some ugly alien Cerna Kolrami, comes aboard to help with the military exercises because he's from a race of strategists, and there's a game called Stratagema, and then Data challenges him to the game. For oh yeah, first Riker challenges him because he thinks it's an honor. He gets his ass kicked immediately, but he thinks it's an honor to play this game because he's a grandmaster. And then Data wants to try it, and Data still ends up losing to him. But then uh, was it? I think like Pulaski sort of convinces him, like Data is like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I lost, and Pulaski convinces him to try again and different tactic, and then Data uses a turtle strategy that he's not trying to attack, he's just defending, and Kolrami cannot defeat him, and eventually Kolrami gives up, and it's sort of nice, it's sort of like the last proper episode with Pulaski, and it shows that her and Data have become friends, and but then it is a bit sad that she's gonna leave the show, then that she's mentioned later on in one later episode because of some. I think it was because in some episode she wiped somebody's memory. Was it the pen pals? So her memory wipe method is referred to once by Doctor Crusher in a later episode. Like, of course, it's nice to see Crusher back, but I liked Pulaski more than I cared to admit at first. Um, but yeah, I think this is a very good episode. Like, just good storytelling. Like, it's not like doesn't advance like the grand schemes, grand political machinations more with Romulans or the Borg or anything like that. But it's just but it does say that it's because of the Borg threat. That's why I had the simulation, but that's doesn't really advance that stuff. But I think it's just well made. And then there's Shades of Grey, which is generally considered the worst Next Generation episode. And even though I sometimes like to be contrarian, I can't really disagree. Like, of course, maybe Skin of Evil or something might contest this, but because this is a clip show episode, their budget was like shoestring basically for this episode, so it's not very good. And because it's just Riker is on some alien planet and he gets infected by something and then he's dying and then he has memories of what stuff that happened in previous episodes, and but then Pulaski manages to save him. So it's yeah, it's not good or anything. Like, I guess it could be worse. That's something I should say. But like, because it's interesting because Stargate actually has a few clip show episodes like that in the later seasons. I mean the earlier seasons at least. I don't know about the later seasons. I haven't seen them, but they actually, some of them are fairly good. Like, they're still clip show episodes, so not that good. But they actually tried to make them suck less than they usually do, because clip show episodes is to save money, and you show a bunch of clips from older episodes. So that's why they did it, because they had a real little budget. Because this season 2 only has 22 episodes. I think the other seasons have, yeah, all of them have like 26 episodes. Let's just go have a look. Few oops, blah blah blah. In case I remember it wrong, yeah, it's 26. Oh yeah, here are all the episodes. 26, 26. Oh yeah, what was the end of season 4? Is Redemption. Yeah, Redemption 1 and 2. Yeah, they are also double episodes. Like, in the beginning I said it's double episodes times, yeah. So all the other seasons except 2 and 3, 2 and 3 start with double episodes. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, it's also a shorter season. I guess that they had budget issues that season, clearly. I guess maybe they were in danger of cancellation, but good thing they weren't cancelled. But okay, lowdown on season 2. It was here. Okay, well, I guess I whatever. Okay, we are here. There's so many of these. Yeah, because it's just good scroll up and down. So I think it's a fairly solid season. I guess it's like fairly even. Few lows, except the lowest low, but that there's an excuse at least why Shades of Grey sucks. They had no money for it. But it's like the best episode, I guess I would have to say, is Contagion. Then second best might be Peak Performance, and then Where Silence Has Lease. Like, uh, The Measure of a Man deserves an dishonorable mention, because it is basically a very good and exciting episode, but it's still the premise. I cannot let go of it. It's stupid that Data is not considered a pure member of the Federation or a sentient being or anything like that. That they have to go through a trial and stuff. But yeah, I do think season 2 is good. Not the best. Like, let's just go back to season 1. Like, how many good or like episodes that I really liked were there? So When No One Has Gone Before, I like that one. The Battle, pretty good as well. uh, Arsenal of Freedom is sort of similar in some sense to peak performance, like sort of this tactical kind of episode I like. But I guess peak performance is a bit better. But then there is of course Conspiracy, one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. So like interesting. Both are one word. Conspiracy and contagion. One word starting with a C, with co. Is there connection? Because these are my favorite episodes from these two seasons. The plot thickens, but how? But I guess that's all I have to say about season two of Next Generation. And I'll see when I get to season three, maybe next week, maybe a bit further. Um, I don't know how much excitement there are, for people to watching me ramble about Next Generation episodes, but I feel obligated. I am this, I have to do it for myself, and I guess just for the my love of Star Trek or something. But yeah, I think season three it felt a bit disappointing, but I'll discuss that when I get to it. So tomorrow I'll start a new game. I won't be streaming Jeanne d'Arc anymore. I've grown to hate the game. I won't play it unless somebody wants to pay me like $100 per an hour or something. Then I can reconsider. But yeah, I probably know the next game I'm gonna stream. If it's that one, it's gonna be a short one that shouldn't take many streams. But after that, like pretty soon, I will get to Operation Babel, the sequel to Operation Abyss. But not just yet. I want something shorter first. Palette cleanser from Jeanne d'Arc. But with that, this was season two of Star Trek Next Generation, TV Argospective, and I'm at Venture Argonaut. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.